as businesses embark on organizational restructuring in the hopes of cutting costs, streamlining operations, or transforming business in the transition into the new normal. Hear from our panel of speakers today as they present a comprehensive overview of the various manpower restructuring options and the key considerations.
So I will just briefly run through how we can actually reduce the cost of our businesses by reducing manpower overhead or increasing productivity. So before we touch on that, right, in Singapore, most of the time, most companies here are actually very manpower heavy as compared to other countries, whereby they may be more focused in manufacturing. So effective human capital management is actually of the most important for companies in Singapore. Yeah. So a little bit about the resource group. So we are actually a team of management consultant, and most of us are actually certified management consultant under the TR43 by Enterprise Singapore. Our aim is actually to help companies to accelerate their growth by building capability internally, including human capital management. So what is human capital management? Human capital management, right, is actually a strategic approach to manage the people in the company to focus on the issues that are actually critical to the organizational success. So for most companies, when we talk about human capital management, we only think about, hiring, payroll and whatnot, but actually there are a lot more areas that we will need to build the capability in. So I'll just share some of this area. Right. So in terms of just our human resource processes, right, that's of course our core HR processes like our employee policies, our payroll processes and whatnot, and also HR management. And some of the things that companies may not see is the importance of effective employees value proposition and employee engagement and communication. Having good value proposition to employee and engagement with them actually raise the morale in your company, and the productivity of your employees will actually increase when they're happy. So other areas including talent management, one of the ways to actually increase productivity is to make sure that we hire the right talent for the job. So it is important to build up capability in the respective area like recruitment and selection. Also allow your employees to grow with the company. As your company grow, the job scope or job description may increase. So it is important to have a learning and development plans for the employees for them to look at in their career progression. Okay. Good performance management processes also allow us to actually align the objective of the company with the employees, and having proper succession planning also means that there is actually no downtime as we transit in our business, especially during this COVID time. A lot of businesses are seeing a lot of changes within their company. Okay. So having effective workforce management is also important. So one of the things is that during the year end, when a lot of companies are doing their budgeting, it is important to also take into consideration manpower planning to make sure that the right resources are allocated and we hire the right talent for the job in the coming year in terms of the objective of the company, right? And this will help us to manage our manpower expenses. During COVID, a lot of things have changed. Retailers, F&B, more the front end businesses are facing a lot of challenges, and a lot of things are actually moving online. This is especially so for adopting e-commerce solution and whatnot. So what this means is that, right, there's also a lot of requirement to redesign certain jobs within the company. Even for companies that are not doing front end businesses, this is also necessary because we may actually require our employees to work from home, like during the circuit breaker period. It is better to be prepared and also to plan for the future. This is also a chance to help us to redesign certain jobs to be more effective and allow us to have an increase in productivity. Okay. So other areas of human capital management also include like compensation and benefits to make sure the employees are properly motivated, organizational structure. For example, I have a client that does, let's say, high-end music equipment. Okay, so as the market shifts, they are moving towards a the target base, the customer target are actually moving towards the younger crowd. So that's where, right, the culture is also different, and the people that actually hire are actually on average below 35. So there is a need for change in organization structure. Okay, and also as COVID blows over, the companies that actually may want to seize the opportunity for overseas expansion. So we also have to build up capability in terms of international mobility. So some of the consideration to take here includes, things like tax zeroization for staff in Singapore that you're actually moving overseas, because if they are going to be a tax residents overseas, the tax rate is actually higher. Fortunately, in Singapore, we have one of the lowest tax rate in Asia. So the interesting thing is that in all these areas of human capital development, it is not something that just come internally, but actually top down from the government level. Our government is actually very supportive. So under Enterprise Singapore, the Enterprise Development Grant, there is actually an area that focus on human capital development. Most of the areas that we have mentioned just now are actually areas that are supported under this grant. Okay. So for those of you that may have not actually benefited from the enterprise development grant, the support level right now is actually up to 80% for SME and 60% for non-SME up to 30th of September 2021. This was extended during the budget that was announced middle of this year. After 30th of September 2021, the support level that the government will be giving will be reduced back to 70%. So in terms of EDG, there are many areas that the government is actually supporting, right? So just to take note that for human capital development, the main cost that you will incur in building up your capability will be consultancy in nature. So if you're actually going to engage a management consultant, just make sure that the management consultant is certified under the technical reference 43. So because for this grant, ESG only subsidize up to 80% or 60% if you're engaging a certified management consultant. So there are actually there's a few kind of management consultant certification out there, namely the practicing management consultant, PMC. This is actually managed by SMF, Singapore Manufacturing Federation. There is also the registered management consultant, and lastly, Singapore Certified Management Consultant managed by this TUSIP. So like for example, for myself, it is actually, I have a SCMC under TUSIP. So to move on to the main point here, right, actually how do we increase productivity or reduce our manpower costs? When we talk about this topic, most of the time, the thing that come to mind here for most business owner is that, okay, so this means that to reduce manpower costs or to increase my margin, it means I have to let go of staff. I would say that that should be used as a last resort, all right? So during COVID, I do have clients who started laying off staff before all the benefits and support from the government kicked in, because their businesses was actually affected in the early part of COVID before it even got serious in Singapore. And some of the thing that we observed, some of the thing they fed back was that, right, when they started laying staff off, it sent a negative message to the employee. The employee's morale was very much affected. Number one, they do not know if they are going to be the next one to be laid off. Number two, they do not know if the company is actually not sustainable in the next few years if COVID gets serious, because they actually started laying staff off, right? There are times whereby that is a necessary action. And when it comes times to do that, we do have to consider that it's being done properly to make sure that staff morale is maintained, but also that, it adheres to the Employment Act, which I think our third speaker will cover later. Okay. So if let's say we are not going to just cut off our manpower from the beginning, what are some of the options that we can do here? What we can do is that, right, we can try to increase productivity. And this means that, right, we can try to produce more with less, or we can produce the same with less. Okay. So to take into consideration how we do that, we think of it this way as, in terms of what our business is going to deliver for service, be it products or services, these are measured in terms of outputs per unit. Okay, so productivity is measured in terms of output per unit of the inputs employed. Okay, So in Singapore, as I mentioned, most of our businesses here are very manpower intensive, including my own. So to increase productivity, right, one of the ways that we can actually try to manage is actually the labor cost or the manpower time that is being spent on providing the services or producing the goods that we are supposed to sell to our customers. Okay. So what are outputs? Outputs, yeah, as I mentioned, is either our product or services. Inputs are the resources that we have. So not to forget that resources includes the space that is necessary to produce the output. Okay. For companies here that are selling products, there is also your material cost or your cost of goods sold to be considered, right? And of course, then lastly, what makes it happen and what allows us to deliver our services or products to our customer is actually manpower. Manpower may be involved in delivering it. Manpower may also be involved in actually producing the outputs. So like for my business, as a consultancy business, my staff are actually consultants and I use also say consultants, right? So manpower is actually the key inputs that we have when we are we're actually delivering our services to our customer. So this is actually very simple because normally our consultants are actually tied to one customer at any one time. But for other businesses whereby your you have different type of manpower and different departments, it cuts across. So how do we actually do that? To determine the manpower cost that is required for per unit of outputs, we can adopt methods like activity-based costing. So a very simple example is that let's say I have a company that has 4 product lines, right? And I have a full-blown marketing department. So the marketing department is actually in charge of actually doing marketing for all 4 products lines that we have. Okay, we will have to actually determine what are the marketing activities required for each product and what is the time that is being spent on each of the product line by the marketing department. And from there, we can actually divide out the cost. So even we single down to actually one marketing manager or one production manager, if this person is doing more than one project, we have to see what are the outputs per project. And if let's say the person's salary is but for discussion's sake, let's say 5,000, if it is actually evenly separate out, divided into 5 activities that is belonging to 5 product lines, then simply put, it will 20% of its cost is attributable to each of the product line or product and services that we are actually looking at. So by doing this, right, we can also see where we can streamline our processes and what are the areas of a automation or productivity improvement that we can do. So measuring productivity, current productivity and future productivity is actually one of the ways for us to map out and see the before and after effect of increasing productivity through various methods. Right. So how do we actually increase productivity to make our business feasible or sustainable in the next coming years? I mean, our PM have announced that, the good news is by the 28th of December, we can have gathering of 8 people or more. I mean, up to 8 people. But the other takeaway here is that he said phase 3 may actually be here for a year or more. So we have to see that, in the next 1 year, the COVID is here to stay. Situation may improve, but it's not going to go back to normal within the year or so, right? So to increase productivity, right, one of the way is that if let's say the inputs or the manpower, the processes are redesigned to be more productive, they can actually produce more outputs with the same units of inputs. You do not have to increase headcount. You do not have to increase the resources. And by improving your processes, there's a possibility whereby you can actually increase the output. The other way here is that, right, if we will maintain our output, there is a way to actually, we have to explore ways to actually reduce the inputs that's required. So for example, if let's say I have a client that is doing food, right? So maybe part of the process is actually doing packaging. So right now they may be doing the packaging very manually. So the staff have to seal the packaging, pack the packaging very manually. You have a production line. There is a possibility whereby if through automation, they can buy a machine to help them to automate the process of packaging. And end of the day, the required number of staff to churn the same output may actually be reduced from, I don't know, 5 to 2. So that is already a 60% improvement in productivity. Another example is that one of my clients who actually does satay wholesale. So in the past, right, when they were doing the satay in their in their plant, the staff have to manually cut the satay and manually steal the satay. What he did was that, right, this company many years ago, they invested into a satay machine. So this machine can actually, they just need 2 staff instead of 10 staff actually doing that every day. So what happens is that they just put the meat in, the machine can actually cut the satay into the correct size based with configuration, and they can steal the satay automatically as well. So initially the process actually had 10 staff, and their output, if I remember correctly, was about 10,000 sticks a day. After they bought the machine, they only need 2 men to actually man the machine. All right. And in fact, the production output actually increased to more than 25,000 sticks per day. Yeah. So we have to look for, to actually reduce our overhead if we do not want to let go of staff. So the staff that actually are not involved in this process, they can then actually be reallocated or being put into other processes to help the company. So we need to look for ways to enhance efficiency, and there will be certain level of redesign of workflow and processes within the company. Okay. So options here include automation, like the satay example that I give. We can try to redesign the process whereby our staff may not have to actually report office or from home is one of the possible areas. All right. Upscaling the workforce. So if let's say, yeah, if to allow the staff to actually do more, right, at times it is as simple as actually providing options for them to upskill to actually do more. So for example, if you have a marketing department, you outsource your digital marketing or SEO, and because your staff are actually not trained in digital marketing, one of the easiest way to increase productivity and save costs is to merely upskill them to make sure they can handle what your company require. So for this, right, our next speaker, Caesar from Little, will actually touch on some of the government assistance that is available in the market to help companies that are looking at upskilling the workforce as an option. Okay. So once again, our government, I have no ties to the government, although I used to work in Spring, Singapore. But once again, our government are actually very supportive in helping SMEs to and non-SMEs to build their capability. So if you are looking at automation as part of the option, as one of the option, there are actually grants that are available to help companies defray costs that they're going to invest into their own capability for automation, process redesign, and even product development. So one of the challenges that some of the companies have is that where to start. So automation actually do funds your company to engage, or process redesign do actually supports the cost of engaging a consultant. So sometimes getting an external party, right, they may have a clearer picture because we are so entrenched in our own business processes. We sometimes may not see the obvious or the solutions or gaps that we have for us to actually automate or improve our processes, right? So once again, for this grant is still under EDG. There are a lot of other grants by other agencies as well, which you can explore. They fund up to 80% right now. Yep. So this is a good opportunity to consider that because later on, it will actually go back to 70%. Yep. Okay. So process redesign as well. You can actually engage a consultant to review or streamline the workflow. And if there is, explore the use and they do fund the adoption cost for either software or hardware as well involved in the processes. If the solution that your company need is somewhat low tech and is very off the shelf, you can also explore PSG, the Productivity Solution Grant. So one of the most popular area under PSG right now is actually laptop. Each company can actually get support for up to 3 laptops for remote working. Okay. So this under PSG. Okay. Yep. So that's all.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So basically, Leeton is a CET partner with SSG that provides total solutions via digital training and talent. So the main aim is to assist enterprise in their digital transformation journey with up to 90% funding. So this is what we have been doing. And in fact, there are 4 things that we actually look at in terms of the entire assistance to help enterprises in their digital transformations, which is probably digital, we call it digital leadership and sales and marketing transformation, tech-enabled operations, business intelligence, as well as digital workplace. So but in today's context itself, talking about manpower restructuring, I will be going directly into what Lytton does in terms of how we actually look at upskilling your current workforce as part of a strategy in terms of your digital transformation journey. All right. So next, let me see. Okay. So as much as I think a lot of you are aware, this has been the recent talk of the town that Singapore needs an additional 60,000 tech professionals for the next 3 years, but the education system within us only provides 2,008 each year. Okay, this has been deliberated by Dr. Vivian Krishna, okay, our Minister for Smart Nations, and it is greatly due to the fact that due to the COVID pandemic that all of us are going through, so there is actually a huge shift in terms of how businesses are being run today, right? So in terms of the entire digital revolutions, the driving skills that it shifted itself, a lot of skills are now shifting into technological skills that is required. And in Lytton itself, we actually face quite a lot of inquiries from our corporate clients to see how we can assist in upskilling the current workforce. And the good thing is that our government has been very supportive, and it has actually made it very, very affordable. All right, but why Lytton? In Lytton, we actually do something that is very, very different in terms of our pedagogy of training, because a lot of enterprises that we encounter find that training, it's very invasive, and it does not really provide the real ROI that the enterprises are looking for, and it actually takes away the time of the people. However, in Lytton, we deliver our training very differently. Okay, it's what we call workplace learning innovations, right? Where we contextualize work-based learning, where we actually allows the learners to apply whatever that they've learned in the class, okay, at the workplace. Okay, this is provided, this is actually supported with experienced mentor that the learners are able to bring in real life projects at work as into the project that they're doing at in Lytton. So, and we also do a lot of collaborative peer-to-peer mentoring. Okay, and this actually is good because it actually helps in terms of the just-in-time access for the necessary programs itself. So in Lytton, what we do is that we practice a learning model of 70-20-10, where 70% of the time is really to deliver work-based learning, right? So, and this allow us to provide upskilling with which is non-invasive, okay, to our corporate clients. So this is again our competency learning as a service. Okay, we call it class. So basically what we do is that the competency-based curriculum is based on the skills framework. As much as all of you are aware, the entire industry in Singapore is divided into 6 clusters. I think about 2-3 years ago, it was 23 sectors, but now it has actually grown to about 33. So what we do is that we also do personalized blended learning, where it is personalized to the workplace, okay, and applied work integrated applied learning, as what as mentioned, is that whatever that you're doing at work, okay, bring it back to the classrooms, okay, where we have industry mentors to actually help you, okay, in applying it at your workplace. So this allows the entire training pedagogy to be non-invasive. In fact, learners are able to provide immediate results, okay, as they are while they are in the classroom itself. Okay, work-based learning. So basically, the conceptual knowledge is done through e-learning and flipped classroom. Okay, and then for live projects and mentoring is where we actually work with industry mentors to assist the learners and then the ability where we are able to get the learners to actually apply whatever that they've learned in the classroom itself. Okay, and okay, this is what I've mentioned. It's non-invasive. All right, so this is actually the digital skills that is required, especially for the new norm nowadays. You know, I saw some of the questions that were asking, you know, what are skills, what are the job roles that needs to be changed, etc. All right. Perhaps later I'll be going into a little bit more details in how we actually look at it. But how do we actually future ready talents? These are the four main skill set that is actually required in today's workforce. First of all is agile innovations. Okay, we have to be agile nowadays, right? We have to have data analytics skills. Okay, digital business and marketing is very, very crucial. In fact, 90% of my clients that we actually help them with is their entire transformations in their digital business and marketing. This is greatly because the entire engagement for your new buyers nowadays is going to be different. All right, and then we look at the technology, the digital technology that is behind it. All right, so these are what I've briefly mentioned. So what are the skills that we are actually looking at in terms of transforming the current workforce? Okay, the digital business and marketing skills. We actually trained a couple of thousands of people, sales people and marketing people. Okay, and we train them into digital sales and digital marketing professionals. Okay, the backend office, people like our finance, our some of the key stakeholders within the company need to be equipped with what we call the business applications and analytics skills. Okay, this will actually help a lot, especially when we start engaging our clients, our prospects digitally. A lot of data are actually coming in, and how do we actually make use of this data to actually help in terms of growing the company? Okay, last but not least is the software infrastructure part. All right, and in terms of how we transform, how we help enterprises in their whole transformation. Okay, the first thing that we actually look at is the digital engagement. In fact, a lot of conversation that I strike with especially the SME bosses is that I no longer ask them whether they are looking at digital transformation, which is probably a common topic that we were talking about before COVID. And now that we are going through the entire post-COVID situation right now, right? And we know that it's going to stay. The conversation that I strike with most of the SME bosses is, how far are you at your transformation? You know, because we know that today, if you don't transform your current company, you don't transform your workforce, it's going to be a tough time for you. So what we do is that we actually invite the key stakeholders, okay, of the company to join us in a 2 weeks boot camp. This, at the end of this 2 weeks boot camp, it is what we call a digital transformation boot camp, where we actually get industry mentors to help you to come up with a personalized industry transformation plan for your company itself. Okay, and then we will work with you in terms of how you can actually execute that, right? So, and what we do is that we also look at your front office, where we look at your current sales and marketing team, how we are able to reskill them so that they are digital ready. Okay, they have to be a digital sales and marketing professionals, and the entire engagement, how you go to market, how do you attract your current customers, have to be different. Right. So when we start doing that, the next thing that we look at is the tech-enabled operations, because as you know, as you start to engage your clients digitally, you will actually churn out a lot of useful informations. So this data that you are able to churn out, right, it has to be kept in probably a CRM or ERP. Okay, and that's how we actually help enterprises in leveraging on some of this SSG funding, okay, for this particular enablement. The next thing that we look at is, with the data that you have, what are you going to do, right? So we train up key stakeholders within the company itself, like the sales head, you know, the marketing head, the finance office, to make use of the data that is being generated, okay, and then to come up with real-time reports so that management will be able to make the right decisions, okay, real-time decisions as well. And last but not least, we look at the entire digital workplace. As you know, we are all mainly working from home. I probably go to office probably once a week, right? But the rest of the week, I'm actually working from home. And how can we then be working effectively in a connected workplace where things are, where communication are seamless, you know, and then how, and it has to be secure. So we talk about digital security, etc. So that's how we help the organizations in terms of their transformation journey. I like to call it a total solutions. And I always tell my clients that, you know, the training itself, with the blessing of the government that is actually doing, it is more than 90% funded for SMEs. And with the S&T payroll that is actually going in itself, the training can actually be very, very affordable, right? Last but not least, you remember the first slide that I actually showed, right, regarding the short of talents, etc. Well, Lytton has trained recently in the past 2 months more than 1,500 job seekers. Okay, so so one of the things that we actually help in terms of our learners is the talent acquisitions, where it's what we call a train and place program, where we are facilitating their placements, helping them in terms of looking for employers, etc. And we are not charging the employers. So we are always looking out for partners who are hiring. You know, you're welcome to send us your resumes. Send us the JD, and then we will be able to do some recruitment drives for you, and it's complimentary. Okay, talent incubation is it's different. Talent incubation is what we call the place and train program, which I think most people would know it as the professional conversion program that we actually assist our enterprises with. So they get up to 45% of the salary funding for 1 year. And the good thing for what is happening now is the job growth incentive. So you can also tap into JGI together with PCP that will increase your entire salary funding to 95%, up to 95% for a year. This is a lot of savings for a lot of my clients in the enterprise clients, okay, in terms of talent, okay. And one of the segments that I'm targeting a little bit out is because due to the fact that there have been actually increased demand of tech talent in Singapore, right? So we are now working with some of the selected clients that requires talent out of Singapore. So that's what we call talent offshoring, right? So that's what we do. So these are some of the skills that we call it digital skills class, okay, competency learning as a service. There are 8 pillars here that we actually upscales the current workforce with. And bear in mind, it is up to 90% funding, excluding S&T payroll. So I do have clients that send people for training, literally not having to pay a single cent. All right. So in terms of digital transformation solution and practices, okay, these are the 4 pillars that I've mentioned, right? In terms of digital engagement, we look at your current sales team, we look at your current marketing team. How are we able to increase your revenue, increase your sales revenue, and at the same time, reduce your marketing budget? Okay, so this is what we have been doing very effectively. The tech-enabled operations, there are 3, basically there are 3 things that we are looking at. One is omni-commerce technology, which is probably, in layman terms, is probably the what do you call it? Those kind of Shopify that we actually help people to train people with, the CRM and marketing technology as well as ERP, right? And the next one is intelligent business, okay, where we look at the business analytics and data science and AI capabilities of the organization, right? The modern workplace, where we look at how we are able to digitize your current workplace to be to have the connectivity as well as the automations and not forgetting the security of it. So, yep. And some of these skill set for business professionals, okay, digital innovations and leadership. This is mainly targeting the key stakeholders of the company itself. Digital sales and marketing, digital operations, digital applications, and data analytics. And in terms of technical professionals within the organization itself, we have the software development, data science, artificial intelligence, data cloud, cybersecurity, etc. So this is all I have to share.
We must consider whether or not the retrenchment is done in a responsible manner, and that it must be the last resort. So there are a few advisories on this. I think the latest was just updated in October 2020 by the Ministry of Manpower. Basically, before companies go through a retrenchment or reorganization exercise, other cost-cutting measures must be tried. It is not, should be, it is not preferably, it must be tried. And only if these cost-cutting measures are not enough, and then you will basically be allowed to go through a retrenchment exercise. This includes a few things. There are some that don't affect anything in terms of wages. So for example, the other speakers have gone through this. You can try training, and of course training will also improve not only your workers' ability to perform jobs out of their job functions, but also because it is highly subsidized, it is the best time to send any of your employees for training. It includes redeployment. So for example, in certain industries, perhaps only an area of their work is progressing during COVID, and therefore they redeploy all the other workers to support this particular area, and therefore the job designation, job roles change. One of the more interesting one that doesn't include wage cut, but I thought was personally quite a good recommendation by the ministry, was actually adopting a flexible work schedule. When we hear of this, we think it's just just being flexible time, but it's not. What it does is basically it also allows you to time bank your unused hours. So for example, if you have workers that earn below 2006, generally that means when they are working overtime beyond 44 hours a week, you need to pay them overtime. But if you actually adopt a flexible work schedule, you can time bank the unused hours. So instead of them working 9 to 6, if they're only working say 2 to 6, they're not working 9 to 12, you can time bank this, and then you can use it in the future up to 2 years, so as not to pay overtime payment or rest days or working on public holidays. But of course, for this part, you need to inform the Commissioner of Labour. So MOM needs to be informed if there are workers that you choose to time bank their hours, and therefore later on not be required to pay overtime hours. These are the first cost-cutting measures that don't include basically any wage cuts. The one that do include wage cuts would be, for example, shorter work weeks, employing a shorter work weeks, or having a temporary sabbatical or layoff. There are strict requirements on this as well. For example, shorter work weeks, you can't exceed cutting off more than 3 days of work and more than 3 months. Of course, you adjust your pay accordingly when you shorten the work week. For sabbatical, it's only allowed if at least 50% of your gross salary is paid, and it should be reviewed on a monthly basis. The other ways is, of course, something that I think most Singapore companies immediately jump to, even though it's supposed to be the later one, is basically to implement a wage cut up to 25% of a gross salary for a local worker, or 25% of a basic monthly salary for a foreign worker. In this case, you will not need notification through MOM if it is less than 25%. If it is more than that, if the removal of any wage cut or any removal of AWS or MVC causes a more than 25% cut, then MOM needs to be informed. One interesting thing that has come up because of COVID that I have had also to relearn during this period is that because of COVID right now, there is a presumption of retrenchment. What that basically means is previously, it will be slightly harder for employees to prove that this is a retrenchment and not a termination. So some employers try to terminate, we call it a disguised retrenchment. They try and terminate according to notice, but they terminate so many of them for no reason, obviously, and that actually crosses over to actually a retrenchment exercise. But of course, they're not honest about it. They don't say. But because of COVID, Minister of Manpower very recently, I think about 4 months ago, came up with a statement to say during this time, there is a presumption of retrenchment if that position is unfilled. If it's a vacancy, then MOM is allowed to presume that this is a retrenchment exercise. There is a notification to be done for that. The only other thing that we need to note basically for salary reductions, I had skipped this part earlier, is that management should take the lead. If, for example, there needs to be a salary cut of not more than 25%, then it must be a case that the management must have taken a higher wage cut, right? I'll move on to my next slide. Okay, so one of the things that also comes about usually during retrenchment exercise is everyone, a lot of employees or a lot of employers will ask us, look, is it compulsory? Must I pay retrenchment benefit? Must I consider whether or not I need to give them a fair package in retrenchment? And the difficulty in a lot of lawyers answering this is that there's two different types of employees essentially. There are those that are covered by Employment Act. Basically, for this particular part in the Employment Act that talks about retrenchment benefit, they have to earn less than 2006 if they're office workers or 4005 if they're manual workers. If they have served at least 2 years, they are entitled to retrenchment benefits. Means the company must pay these workers retrenchment benefits. What is not legislated is the amount. So that has come up through an advisory, that has come up through a prevailing norm, but the requirement to pay exists. For those workers that fall out of this exception or they have worked for less than 2 years, the advisory remains that it is best to still give them retrenchment benefits or term it as an ex gratia requirement. Most of what I'm talking about is actually inside the tripartite advisory on managing excess manpower and responsible retrenchment. You will find a few annex in that particular advisory as well that will help companies especially look through as whether or not they are doing a responsible exercise. So Annex A, for example, sets out a lot of the cost saving measures that companies must take before engaging in this. Annex B gives you a checklist on what you need to go through with your employees, with union to make sure that it is a responsible retrenchment. And Annex C gives you a sample of the notification that you need to put up. The National Wages Council also has some advisory. I don't believe this was updated in COVID, but they do have some advisory on how responsible retrenchment should be done. It is important, and I think this is something that a lot of employers fail to realize. It is not just about the reputation of the company or involving yourself in litigation, but the ministry has come forth to say very clearly, look, if we have given JSS support in April, May, July, October, and I think April and May was at 75% or up to a particular amount of wages, then we will recover these wages in the event that we find out that retrenchment is not done in a proper manner, that the cost saving measures were not analyzed first, were not done first. And if the employees actually receive lesser than what the government has given in terms of JSS. More importantly, there is a civil recovery to this. It is also an offense that can be prosecuted for if there's a failure to comply with a retrenchment notification exercise. So there carries quite a lot of weight for employers who don't comply with this. In terms of the process, most of this is found very easily in the tripartite framework, but I will just go through what is the general kind of guideline that companies need to center itself around. And this really is about the process. The process of retrenchment must be transparent. Employees must be engaged early, unions as well, if these are unionized employees. There must be clear and early communication. In my line of work, we realize, I realize at least, that a lot of the disgruntled employees that come to me to find out whether the retrenchment exercise is properly done, whether what they're receiving is fair, are employees that were not informed early of their retrenchment exercise, employees that sometimes find out only after a public announcement. I'm aware of a few big companies that have not informed their employees, and their employees were only made aware after public announcement is made. This is very tricky because imagine if you are losing your job, you would want to be treated with dignity, with respect, with compassion, which is what the general guidelines kind of ask companies to try and pay attention to. And this does include their right of knowing early, their right of preparing, their right of conversation with the companies. It needs to be talked about, not necessarily a direction from top down. And that can actually save you a lot of legal costs, a lot of headache with MOM. That's something we definitely encourage. The process itself has to be non-discriminatory. If a few employees are being retrenched, or there is a reorganization of employment, then certain factors come up in play, one of which is age. Age of employees cannot be the discriminatory factor. Their race, their gender, their religion. This is quite interesting. Previously, I would think that the nature of workforce was also important. You shouldn't be discriminating between foreign workers and locals. But there has been a slant towards Singaporean core, we call it, especially because I think the economy has been taken quite a hit. And I think a lot of foreign workers are also stuck overseas, or they have to serve quarantine before coming back. So the advisory actually says that preferably the local workforce will maintain more, or at least in proportion to the foreign workers workforce. In terms of how much do I give, which is the question that everyone has, how much do I give and where do I start to say that this is a responsible exercise? Your starting point is always the contract. If in your employment contract, retrenchment benefits or reorganization benefits or loyalty benefits is something that has been talked about, this is something that companies should start with. If it is not inside, and then you can look at the prevailing norm. I will explain the prevailing norm in a while. But what is also important is, other than the retrenchment benefits itself, something that is very important and something that can help companies appear responsible, appear compassionate, is to give a longer notice period. So even if the contract states 1 month notice, as a lawyer, I've always encouraged the companies to give a longer notice in view of the fact that these persons may be out of job for possibly a long time given the economy, that their benefits should continue being paid, that they should be given job placement programs. Job placement programs are slightly more complicated. It does not mean that the company needs to basically place these employees in other jobs, but attempts needs to be done. For example, of course, as earlier we've heard as well, companies can reach out to certain organizations, including SNEF, UPME Center, NTUC Job Security Council, to basically seek for help in trying to find a suitable job for the employees. A company that has come to mind very easily for me, a company that I think did this very, very well, was actually Airbnb. I think Airbnb, what they did, and I'm not sure it was reported, but it definitely came out everywhere on my LinkedIn. What they did was, when they went through a retrenchment exercise and decided to terminate some of the employees, they gave very good recommendations, very good reference letters, and they posted on their LinkedIn, look, we are set to let this person go. This person has been with us for this long. This person will be an asset. If your company is interested in employing them, please reach out to us. I think that really helps in managing the employees' feelings, but also helps in the job placement exercise that they are giving to the employee in order to perhaps help the employee find a job faster. So these are things that's very important. One of the other ways that is a soft method of kind of cushioning the blow is actually to make these payments, these retrenchment payments, clearly as loss of office payments. This attracts tax issues. Loss of office payments are not taxable, which means your employee gets more of that money as compared to saying, oh, we'll give you a longer notice because of this, or we'll give you an ex gratia payment because of that. It does help to term it in the right way. This is part of the advisory. I'm not going to read it out. This basically highlights the steps that employers should take in trying to see whether or not they're handling the process well. It encompasses quite a bit of what I've already spoken about, but this just sets it out correctly. So the other one is here. Okay, so if we look at C and D, this is more of kind of managing employees kind of feelings. And it's something that a lot of companies also feel. In my line of work, like I said, most of them come to us already disgruntled. And this is one of the reasons why there's no open channel. More importantly, some of them are told to vacate their workplaces during COVID when they're not allowed to enter offices, or sometimes told that they will just be shipped their possessions. Some of them are escorted out of their workplaces. It actually really affects them because of the treatment, how they're not treated with dignity and respect, and it actually encourages a lot of them to seek a legal assistance, to say, hey, I don't think I've been treated well, and this is why I want to go to a lawyer to get my fair rights. So it's a lot to do with emotions, managing them. And it's really important, and it really shows how responsible the company is. So that's the last one, that employers should be sensitive to the emotional needs of these employees and even consider counseling. Okay, so towards the end, let's talk about what more can employers do other than managing emotions and all that, and what is definitely required. So what is required, definitely, if it's a union company, unions needs to be involved, union needs to be informed of any negotiations, the union needs to represent, be present for these negotiations. But if not, what needs to be done is a notification, as I've said earlier, needs to be put up. The requirement is basically any registered company that has more than 10 employees, if 5 or more workers are being retrenched within a 6 months period. That's quite a long period. So it doesn't need to be 6 at one go. It doesn't need to be 5 at one go. It could be 5 in 6 months. And that is actually a retrenchment exercise, unless the company can prove otherwise, of course, bad performance, termination without notice. But if not, then this is considered a retrenchment. A notification needs to go up as part of the package. Like I said earlier, the difficulty is that it's not legislated how much companies need to pay. I think a quick Google would tell us companies like StarHub, companies like, I think DFS have got into the media before, where they have offered or not offered actually retrenchment benefits. And of course, the advisory clearly says you're supposed to pay between 2 weeks to 1 month per year of service. Usually, if there's a union, the collective agreement will actually state 1 month. Then you have employers who ask me, but what if, Muntas, I'm facing severe financial difficulties? In those cases, MOM has said in the recent advisory that what the companies can do, instead of linking it to the years of service, 2 weeks, 1 month per year of service, is to pay a lump sum between 1 to 3 months of their pay. But you need to do this only if it's severe financial difficulties. MOM can question you, can ask you for documents evidencing why the company is going through severe financial difficulties. And more importantly, the company had just undergone a salary cut. The benefit that needs to be paid out must be the amount before the salary cut. So essentially, it just needs to be fair. It's difficult to understand what's fair. It is a case-to-case basis. Therefore, I do get a lot of consultations on what is fair and what is not. But I think if companies try, they try and they know they've gone through their numbers, they've taken a very long-term view of their manpower, it'll be much easier for them to explain why they're unable to pay a certain amount. I'm going to end soon, but what is important here is something that is not law, something that is not legal, but something that's more soft. Some companies come to me, whether big or small, and they tell me, I can't pay. I don't care if MOM comes after me. I don't think MOM will ask me to pay. I don't think they can show that I have the financial payment to pay, or they can say, I'm not going to pay because this employee anyway has been terrible. I've been keeping the employee and now it's time to get rid of the employee. There are many reasons for that. But I always tell them, other than MOM's investigations, other than the fact that maybe civil or criminal penalties to this, what is essentially important is the company's reputation. You need to remember that reputation for companies is built. It is not something that comes immediately. When there is media attention already attracted by these companies, especially of course if you're big companies or startup companies that's trying to gain a reputation, you lose a lot. You lose a lot by the display or the alleged display that the company is not undergoing a responsible retrenchment exercise. And also the MOM benefits can be curtailed very easily. Things, for example, a freeze on your manpower ability to apply for work pass and all that may be something that will affect a company in the future, not necessarily now. And something that I consider as well when I am trying to manage the law firm with my managing partner is basically what's in our mission, what's in our vision, what's the motto objective of the company. If it is for us to appear or to at least attract people on the basis that we're a responsible company, that we will walk with them, rain and shine, then that needs to come through very clearly in your cost saving measures. It needs to come through very closely, openly in your retrenchment exercise. And if this is done right, one day when the company, let's say, picks up again, it will not be difficult calling back these employees to come back and help your company grow again. So it is really important to look at it in a wide perspective.